Okay, so let's dive into this.
Right.
We're going deep today into Canada's housing market
Oh, fun.
in 2025.
All right.
Specifically, we're going to be looking at a segment from BNN Bloomberg with John Passalis.
Okay.
He's president of Realosophy Realty.
Yes.
And I think this is going to be like your cheat sheet for what's ahead in real estate. It could be really overwhelming
Oh,
to
yeah.
try to figure out like what's going on
Absolutely.
with all the conflicting information
So much information.
that's out there.
Yeah.
So we're here to make things a little bit simpler for
I
you
have some.
and help you make some decisions
Sounds good.
about your own real estate journey.
Yeah. John Passalis is great.
Yeah.
He's got a really unique perspective because he's not just like an analyst or anything.
Right.
He's a realtor.
Yes.
Who's like in the market.
Exactly.
So he's really seeing the trends firsthand.
Yeah, he's down on the trenches.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is all super fresh information.
It is.
Because this segment aired just a couple days ago.
Yeah.
January 2nd.
Yeah, so this is like really up-to-date stuff.
So he dropped some serious knowledge bombs
He did.
about the trends and factors that are going to be shaping the Canadian housing market in 2025.
For sure.
What were some of like the big takeaways for you?
Well, one of the big things he emphasized was interest rates.
Okay.
He anticipates that they're going to remain relatively stable throughout the year.
Okay.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
He mentioned that there are projections suggesting they'll hover around 4.5 to 5%.
Wait, so stable, but still at that level?
Yeah.
That's got to have an effect on affordability.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
He was very clear that even those small fluctuations within that range
Yeah.
can really have a ripple effect on affordability.
Wow.
So buyers shouldn't get complacent just because rates aren't like skyrocketing.
That's a really good point because it's easy to just hear the word stable
Right.
and think, okay, everything's fine. We're smooth sailing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a really important nuance.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so interest rates are one piece of the puzzle.
Uh-huh.
What else is he seeing in terms of these like big overall market trends?
Well, remember we've been talking about how people are moving away from those major urban centers.
Right.
Turns out that is still very much a thing.
Oh,
While smaller cities.
Yeah.
And those suburban areas are seeing more and more demand.
Okay.
And John Passalis thinks that this could be like a defining characteristic of the entire 2025 market.
Makes you wonder, why is it sticking around?
Yeah.
Is it still pandemic driven
Mm-hmm.
or is there something else going on?
Right, totally. And he actually pointed to a few factors.
Okay.
Obviously, remote work is a huge one.
Right.
But there's also like this growing desire for more space
Yeah.
and that sense of community,
Okay.
which those smaller towns often provide.
Makes sense.
And of course, you can't forget about affordability.
Yeah.
A lot of people simply can't afford those crazy prices in the big cities.
Yeah, it's like one trend triggers another and then suddenly everything starts to change.
Totally. It's a domino effect.
So we've got these migration patterns happening.
Yeah.
But what does that mean for buyers and sellers?
Right.
Like, who has the advantage in this market?
That is the question.
Yeah.
Well, based on his analysis, it seems like it might be a little more balanced this year
Okay.
compared to the really strong seller's market we've been seeing these past few years.
Right.
But he was also careful to say that it's not really a buyer's market either.
So no clear winner.
Yeah, no clear winner.
Which I guess means things are going to be pretty unpredictable.
Yeah, probably a little more unpredictable.
Does that mean the prices will stabilize too?
Well, he didn't give like any hard predictions about overall price movements.
Okay.
But he did say that affordability is going to continue to be a major concern.
Right.
Especially with those interest rates we were just talking about.
Yeah.
He even suggested that the condo market in those big cities
Right.
might actually see more price growth than detached homes.
Yeah. Interesting.
Which would be a pretty big change.
Yeah, that would be a shift.
Yeah,
So it sounds like location and property type are going to be really important factors this year.
I think so.
I'm curious, did he use any visuals in this segment?
He did.
Like any charts or anything?
Yeah.
Because sometimes visuals can be really helpful
Oh, for sure.
when you're trying to explain this stuff.
Absolutely. There was this one chart that showed the average home prices
Okay.
in a bunch of different Canadian cities
Okay.
over the last few years.
Okay.
And you could really see how some of the smaller markets have seen these big price jumps,
Wow.
which just confirms what we were talking about.
Yeah.
That shift, it was
Yeah.
pretty striking to see it visually.
Okay, cool. I bet that was interesting for the viewers.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're starting to get a sense of, the market dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
But let's get a little bit more practical here.
Okay.
He's a realtor, so I'm sure he has some advice
Oh, he did.
for people who are trying to navigate this market. So what did he suggest?
Well, one thing he really emphasized
Okay.
was doing your research
Okay.
and not getting swept up in the frenzy.
Easy to do.
It is so easy to do when you're buying or selling a home. It's emotional.
Totally.
But he was saying you really need to stay level-headed.
Right.
You need that level-headed approach.
Fear and hype lead to bad decisions.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
All the time.
All the time.
Okay, so did he go into any specifics about the type of research people should be doing?
He did.
Okay.
He was very adamant about understanding those local market conditions.
Okay.
It's not enough to look at the national trends.
Right.
You really have to drill down to the neighborhood level.
Interesting.
He kept saying real estate is hyper-local, meaning that what's happening in one neighborhood could be completely different from another neighborhood just down the street.
Right.
So you can't compare them.
It's apples to oranges.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're just looking at those broad statistics.
Right.
Did he have any other practical tips?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
He really urged homeowners to be realistic about their finances.
Okay.
Make sure you're comfortable with those mortgage payments, especially with the potential for those interest rates to fluctuate even a little bit within that stable range.
It's all about planning for the unexpected.
It really is.
Okay, so any warnings
Oh, yeah.
about things that people should be careful about
Definitely.
in this market?
One big one was trying to time the market
Oh, yeah.
perfectly.
That's so tempting.
I know.
I think you can do that.
It's tempting, but he said it's impossible.
Right.
You can't predict those peaks and valleys.
Right.
And if you try to do that,
Yeah.
you're going to miss out on opportunities.
Right. So don't try to be a fortune teller.
Yeah, don't try to be a fortune teller.
I'm sure a lot of people needed to hear that.
Probably.
Yeah.
It's really tempting to think you can outsmart the market,
Totally.
but usually it doesn't work out. He said you should focus on finding a property that fits your needs and your budget for the long term.
Okay.
Not just like right now.
Long-term thinking over speculation.
Exactly.
I like it.
Smart.
Okay, so we've got a sense of the market trends and his advice.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to kind of connect all of this to the larger economic picture.
Okay.
How do things like interest rates and inflation and employment, all that stuff.
All that fun stuff.
Yeah. How does that play into these housing market predictions?
Well, even though interest rates are projected to be stable, if they were to increase unexpectedly, that could really make things less affordable and cool down the market.
Okay, so keep an eye on those announcements.
Yeah, for sure.
From the Bank of Canada.
Keep an eye on them.
What about inflation?
Well, he acknowledged that inflation is definitely still a concern.
Right.
But he also said that it might have less of an impact on the housing market in 2025. Compared to the last couple of years.
Okay.
So it's possible that the market is starting to adjust to it.
Maybe that initial shock has worn off.
Yeah, maybe.
And what about employment trends?
We highlighted that strong employment numbers are really, really crucial.
Right. More jobs, more buyers.
Exactly. More people who have the financial stability to buy homes.
Right. Yeah. It all comes down to that sense of security and confidence in the economy. Did he mention any global economic trends or events that could have an impact?
He didn't mention any specific events, but he did say that Canada's housing market isn't an island.
Right. It's all interconnected.
It is.
So any major shifts in the global economy
could definitely have repercussions here.
That's a lot to consider.
It was a lot.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground here.
We have.
If you had to just pick one key takeaway
Okay.
from everything that John Passalis was talking about, what would it be?
I think the main takeaway is that the market is walking a tightrope between balance.
Okay, and uncertainty.
Balance and uncertainty. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I like that. All right, so we've talked about these big picture trends.
Yeah.
But now I want to get into how all of this plays out in different parts of the country.
For sure.
Canada is huge.
Huge.
And the housing market is definitely not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Not at all.
So what are some of the regional differences that John Passalis highlighted?
Well, one that really stood out was Atlantic Canada.
Interesting. I have heard that Atlantic Canada has been a hotspot.
It has.
Yeah.
It's been seeing this surge in popularity.
Okay.
People are moving there.
Why?
For a few reasons, actually. Affordability is a big one.
Okay.
And also lifestyle.
Yeah.
And the scenery.
Oh, yeah. Can't forget about the scenery.
It's beautiful.
Stunning ocean views.
Yeah, who wouldn't want to live there?
Exactly. Yeah.
But, that also raises a question.
Okay.
If all these people are moving to Atlantic Canada.
Doesn't that create more competition?
Right.
And potentially drive prices up?
Makes sense.
Well, John Passalis seems to think that that trend is going to continue,
Okay.
which could definitely mean that we're going to see prices go up.
Okay.
But he was also careful to say that it's not a sure thing.
Right.
There are other factors at play,
Oh.
like what's happening with the local economy.
Right.
And how much housing is available.
So it's not just about following the crowds.
Exactly.
You really have to look at the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Atlantic Canada is one to watch.
Yeah.
What other regions did he talk about?
Well, I talked about Alberta.
Okay.
Which is obviously really tied to the energy sector.
Right.
And this is where those global economic forces we talked about come into play.
So is he saying that Alberta is like a gamble?
I wouldn't say gamble,
Okay.
but it's definitely more volatile than some other markets.
Okay.
He explained that the outlook for Alberta really depends on how well the oil and gas industry is doing.
Okay, so if energy prices stay high,
Yeah.
Alberta could see a lot more activity.
Right.
But if they drop, then things could slow down.
It's a bit of a roller coaster.
But haven't there been efforts to diversify Alberta's economy?
There have.
So it's not all about oil and gas anymore.
Right. And that could provide some stability.
Right.
But it really depends on how quickly and effectively that happens.
So it's about weighing the potential rewards with the risks.
Exactly.
Okay. Did he talk about any other regions?
He briefly mentioned British Columbia.
Okay. BC is beautiful.
It is.
But expensive.
Yes. Very expensive.
Yeah. So is he saying that people should avoid BC?
Not necessarily. He actually believes that the province's strong economy
Okay.
and its, pretty great lifestyle
Yeah.
are going to continue to attract buyers.
So even with those high prices.
Yeah, it seems like it.
So it's like this tug of war between affordability and desirability.
It really is.
So even though there are these big trends affecting the entire Canadian housing market, it seems like each region has its own little microclimate.
It does.
It's got its own set of factors that are influencing things.
Absolutely. And I think this really brings us back to what John Passalis said about doing your research.
Yeah.
And understanding those local nuances is going to be so crucial this year.
Don't just look at those national headlines.
Exactly.
You got to dig deeper.
Yeah.
Explore different neighborhoods. Find those hidden gems.
I love that.
I was thinking about our listener out there.
Yeah.
Trying to make sense of all of this.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most valuable piece of advice that John Passalis gave?
I think the most important thing he said was, don't let your emotions make decisions for you.
Oh, that's so important.
It is.
It's easy to get caught up in the hype.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's fear of missing out or, feeling pressured to buy or sell.
You really need to stay calm.
Yeah.
It's a big financial decision.
Don't let your emotions drive the bus. Okay, so we've talked about market trends, regional nuances, practical advice.
Yeah.
But now I want to explore some of those bigger questions.
Ooh, okay.
That John Passalis' insights have raised for me.
All right.
Questions about what this all means for our communities, for society as a whole.
That's important.
Let's get philosophical.
Let's do it.
All right, so we've talked about the trends and, we've gotten some expert advice.
Yeah.
We even looked at the regional differences across Canada. But now I kind of want to zoom out a little bit and get philosophical.
I like it.
John Passalis' insights really got me thinking about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
What are the implications of all of this?
Yeah.
It's not just about you and me buying or selling a house.
Right.
It's about our communities, our society.
Yeah.
What does this all mean for the future of Canada?
Right. It's easy to get caught up in that individual perspective.
Yeah.
Can I afford this?
Yep. Right. Is it a good time to sell?
Exactly.
But there's so much more to it than that.
Yeah. Yeah, like we were talking about earlier, these smaller cities and suburbs are becoming more and more popular.
Yeah.
But what happens to the big cities if that keeps happening?
Right.
Do they just lose their energy?
Yeah.
Their diversity?
That's a really good question, and it's something that urban planners are thinking about a lot these days.
Yeah.
How do you keep a city feeling vibrant when people's preferences are changing?
Yeah.
Some people think this is actually an opportunity
to
reimagine what cities can be.
Yeah.
Make them more focused on community.
Right.
And less about commuting.
So it's not about decline.
Right.
It's about adapting.
Yeah, evolving.
Yeah. And then there's the issue of affordability.
Right.
If home ownership just keeps getting harder and harder for Canadians, what does that do to our society?
That's a huge issue.
Yeah.
It can really fuel inequality.
Affordable housing is so important.
Yeah.
For a fair and just society.
Right.
When people can't find a decent place to live, it affects everything.
Yeah.
Education, opportunity.
Yeah. It's like this giant tangled web.
It is.
Housing affects everything.
It really does.
You know what's funny is John Passalas didn't really talk about these things in this segment, but his ideas really got me thinking about all of this.
Yeah.
It's not just about numbers and trends.
Right.
It's about people's lives.
It is about belonging.
Yeah.
Finding a place where you feel like you belong.
And when that becomes harder, it makes you question, what are we doing?
Right. What are our priorities as a society?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, this brings us back to what John Passalas said about thinking long term.
Yeah.
It's not about trying to, you know, time the market or make a quick buck.
Right.
It's about finding a place that works for you for years to come.
For the long haul.
So knowing all of this, if you were thinking about buying or selling a home in 2025, what would be your biggest concern?
That's a good question.
Or your biggest question?
Yeah.
And how would you find the answer?
I think that's a perfect question to leave our listeners with.
Yeah. We want them thinking about this stuff.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's up to us.
It is.
To make these decisions.
Yeah, we can either just go with the flow.
Yeah.
Or we can really think about what we're doing.
Be intentional.
And that's what we're all about here on the Deep Dive.
Absolutely.
Giving you the information you need to make those decisions.
Empowering people.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thanks for listening.
Remember, stay curious.
Stay informed.
And keep diving deep.
We'll see you next time.